Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. For those who are just rolling in, we'll just keep accepting the registrations, but welcome everybody to our first CAEPD professional development and leadership speaker series. CAEPD is we're so fortunate to be a Dean Center. It stands for the Center for Asian Equity and Professional Development. And over the past couple of years, we've had a wonderful team working together to elevate Asian leadership and to work with all partners to address any kind of discrimination that people may experience based upon our identity. And tonight we are very pleased to share with you an incredible speaker panel. I'm going to go ahead and introduce them, and then we'll have questions. We'll entertain questions after each speaker. Our first speaker today is Dr. Tewari, and he will be speaking on an anti-fragile mindset. Dr. Tewari is the Milton and Carroll Petrie System Department Chair of Urology for Mount Sinai Health System. He is a world-renowned urologist and prostate cancer specialist and researcher. And with his vision, he's really innovating and shaping the entire urology community at large. And the way we think about cancer truly is inspirational. We also have Dean Karen Kim. She's going to talk about challenges that should not deter you. Dean Kim is the Dean of Penn State College of Medicine. She is the Dorothy Four Huck and J. Lloyd Huck Chair in Rural Health Research. And her research focuses on advancing cancer health equity among marginalized and vulnerable populations. She's also the founder and director of the Center for Asian Health Equity at Penn State, the college's first woman dean, and also the only Korean American woman medical school dean in the country. And last but certainly not least, we have Dr. Eric Wei, who will be speaking about psychological safety. Dr. Wei is the Senior Vice President and Chief Medical Officer of New York City Health and Hospitals. This is the largest municipal safety net system in the United States. He is a professor of emergency medicine here at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai, and also an adjunct professor at NYU School of Public Health. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A, and we will answer them as we're able to live, and we'll also entertain questions after each speaker. So without further ado, I welcome Dr. Tewari.
Hey, Amanda, you missed yourself. You are a role model for everyone else in the Asian community.
That's true. Oh, that's very kind, but you're right. I forgot to introduce myself.
Yeah, because those who don't know you, if they need something to be done in Mount Sinai Health System, and if it is complex, you will get it done, and you get it done with class. So thank you for what you do, and thanks for being an inspirational leader for everyone who is joining this group. You put it all us together. So there is a lot of background work which you have done, and I think I'm lucky that all the other panelists are with the same mindset. So thanks again before we start anything.
That's very kind. Thank you very much, Ash.
So I think these panels are meant to motivate. And I got a lot of motivational mindset when I was growing up. And I thought I should share a little bit of the journey which I have had. There are a lot of mistakes I have made, but there are some things which have happened right. And maybe sharing those mistakes and some of the successes will help everyone else who's going through that right now will feel that it's okay to try. It's okay to sometimes not succeed. And it's okay to try another way of doing things. And one thing which I want everyone in this panel who is listening to me should not think that we have to justify anything for being an Asian. It's an asset that we got few different ways of solving the same problem built into our DNA. And that's an asset, and that asset has helped me many times. And I will give one or two examples where I used my mindset when I was growing up in India, and that mindset led me to do some things which worked here also. So think about it. You have more than one way of solving a problem. How can we think about it as a handicap? Now, this is an asset we have, and we have to just leverage that asset in a very smart way, because we have to make friends We have to succeed amongst the group of people who allowed us to come and do things which we are doing. And there are ways we can learn and evolve and learn from what is going on here. So I had to transition from cricket to baseball. That's a learning process. Both games have their own pluses, they have their own nuances, and I can bring in some cricket language into my day-to-day discussion while I had to learn the baseball. So that journey started in 1993 when I came to United States through San Francisco. I was with my wife and two children who were 3 and 4 year old. Four of us, we started our journey, and I was at UCSF working at the VA hospital. And I was already a trained urologist who wanted to come and do a fellowship in prostate cancer. And that journey led me through Florida for a short while. And then I ended up in Michigan, where I was lucky to be part of a group who was doing the first robotic surgery. And that robotic surgery revolution now has become a standard of care in many of the cancer treatments. That led me to New York. I was a professor at Cornell for 10 years. And for the last 10 years, I've been here at Mount Sinai as in system chair of urology, and for last 2 years as in surgeon-in-chief for the Tisch Cancer Hospital. These names look very impressive, but it's been a journey. And one thing which I can think about that why I have been successful, it's because of the family values which I had and the support which I had, not support just from my family, but the friends I made in the process. So one thing which we can absolutely be sure about it, making as many friends as you can in the path while you are making yourself going up in your trajectory for the academia. I think it's an important investment because you need to learn other person's perspective before they can believe what you want to tell them. That's an important piece of the mindset I have. And very early on, I read a book, which the name of that book was Anti-Fragile. Coming from the non-English language part of the word, I wanted to deep dive into it. And I started reading about Nasib's and a famous writer who was from the investment banking and the financial field, who wrote that we all are entities, we all are systems, we all are humans. And when something unforeseen happens, what I mean, if something which is not happy happens, then we either crumble. So a glass or an egg is fragile. You press it too hard, it will kind of crack. So, okay, that is fragile. You have a tennis ball that if you bounce it, it will come back to the same place. And we call that it is actually resilient or it is robust. But there is a third system which exists, and that third system is known as an anti-fragile, meaning had it not been that something bad happened, that system not only goes down, bounces back again, but it evolves to a better place than had it never been for that pressure, they will never reach there. And we call these systems as an anti-fragile. And once you start reading about it, read about the DNA, read about the life as such. Life is the most anti-fragile mindset. Every time there is a heat, there is a mutation happen, and that mutation helps us to adapt to that surrounding a little bit better. In my own life, certain things have happened which could have been pain. They were painful at that time, but somehow when I'm looking back at them, they are actually the asset. And I'll give you one example. When I was in a medical school, about second term in that, I started having something which is known as hematuria. Hematuria essentially means that you start passing blood and you get colicky pains and all those things. And this time is in early 80s. There were no real urologists in that part of the world at that time. There were only 8 seats for a urologist in India at that time. And I was in the medical school. and they couldn't diagnose why I was having hematuria. I was admitted into the hospital many times. While everyone else is studying, I was spending time in a hospital ward to be evaluated, dealing with the pains and all those things. And they really couldn't come up with a solution as to why I was having it. But bottom line is they had a differential of infection, inflammation, tumors, and all those things. And that kind of weighs on your mind quite a bit. My parents were in a part of the India known as Kanpur, and they tried to get me to see a urologist in Delhi. They tried for 2 years. They it was difficult to get to a urologist at that time because there were so few of them in the whole country. That was pain, but that pain became my passion to become a urologist myself. And later on, I saw a urologist who got a CAT scan done. And then finally, they found that I had a calicial diverticulum with calcification in there. And that was the source for what I was facing. So had it never been for that pain, I may have never become a urologist. So my becoming a urologist has its own story. And I think that is the mindset I call, that's an anti-fragile mindset. Things will happen to us. We don't have a control on what hits us, but we do have a control on how we respond to what hits us. And that mindset has stayed with me. And when I put together this department here, we often talk about it, what anti-fragile means. Essentially, when COVID happened, we were 180 people department and a lot happened. I mean, we all have experienced COVID just about 3 years ago. A lot of our faculty, a lot of our employees, a lot of our team members faced that. I personally had a COVID discussion, but we evolved. We evolved as a group of family. We got closer. We learned a lot. And now we are about 300 employees in our department. So our department grew to be a better department, more homely department. And it would not have happened but for we facing all that which was going on. And everyone else faced it. But we think we came out of it with a little bit of victory. We got a couple of papers published on prostate cancer and the COVID and what impact does it have on the whole immunogenic mechanism. So I want you all to think about that. Being in a new atmosphere, sometimes you feel that you have a pressure, something unfriendly happens. Small pains happen to everyone. But how we respond to those small pains sometimes makes a difference between who you are, whether you are a winner or you are going to just think about that pain. Most of the time in the morning, when I meet someone, the first question they ask, how are you doing? And I don't know where and how it started. My first response is, I'm happy. I think that I'm happy mindset not only makes me happy, but the person who would listen to me. And now I have got about 4 or 5 people every morning who just want to come and say hello to me so that I can say that I'm happy. So changing your situation into something in your mind, I think is one of the biggest assets we have. I will give you an example of how my prostate cancer journey evolved and how my previous interactions with my own upbringing in India had an impact on it. And that story goes to a story of tigers. Growing up, I spent a lot of time with my grandfather who used to recite me stories that India had a lot of tigers at some point. And at a particular time in the Indian journey, tigers became a little bit crazy and they started killing humans. And that led to a lot of panic in India. And that was a book was written up for man-eaters of India. A particular hunter was brought into that discussion, and his hunter's name was Jim Colbert. Jim Colbert was a particular hunter who knew how to differentiate between the normal tigers and the man-eater tigers. And he finally nailed down those who were the bad actors, but spared every other tiger, and he created a tiger sanctuary in India. The same mindset came to play a role when 20 years later in the United States, when I was becoming a very busy prostate cancer surgeon. Year was about 2008, and I was doing about 500-600 radical prostatectomies, and we started appreciating that not every patient with prostate cancer had a lethal cancer, and some of them could have been observed just by a careful monitoring. That's where the concept of active monitoring came. So while on one side I was training myself to be the surgeon who can take the cancer out, I also grew and understood a lot about the genomics and understood a lot about the disparities, and I started making an attempt that only operate on those patients who really need an operation. And now I have one of the largest programs here on an active monitoring also, along with my 10,000 patients I have operated on. So my past journey, past experiences led me to differentiate between the bad actors with the good actors, and that led me to make a better decision. So my previous experience, what I had in India, they definitely made me a better surgeon or possibly a better doctor here. There are many other examples. In India, when I was growing up, being a doctor, I was a surgeon. I was a certified surgeon in that part of the world. And many a times you get a very poor patient, and patient comes to you. They need a treatment right then and there. There is no one else who is going to help them. And sometimes it involved that I or my team member had to go and donate blood for the same patient who I'm going to operate a few hours later. It looked very normal, and that was the only way to do things, and we did it. And I became a 7-gallon-year. I mean, I may have donated about 7 gallons of blood in that journey. The same mindset that you are the only one who has to make a difference. When I'm practicing medicine here and I'm seeing that there is in one racial group, there is twice the mortality in that group with same cancer, what others have in half the mortality. We started thinking about what to do. We deep dived into the genomics, we deep dive into the disparity factors and molecular pathways. But one thing I realized that if I could have found this patient's cancer 2 years earlier, I could have cured this one. Once that thought clicked in my mind, it's the same mindset which was donating blood when the patient needed it right then and there. I created a mobile unit, and we started doing a point of care PSA and point of care diagnostics. And that unit now has, as of yesterday, seen 6,000 patients, and 18% of those patients have prostate cancer or an abnormal PSA. So what I'm trying to tell is that having different experiences are not something we should be feeling sad about. Actually, we should be very proud about them, because they sometimes give you a different approach of answering the same question. And we are definitely resilient. We are definitely anti-fragile, because we made an effort, or your parents made an effort, or we personally, I came to come through the adversities and have traveled this much of a distance. We have made a point, and I think this is an asset. And that's all what I want you all to remember. Go and celebrate. Think about it as an asset. There are a lot of great things going to happen. This is a great society, and we can only merge together. We just need to change cricket to baseball. Thank you.
Dr. Tewari, I never cease to be amazed by you, and every time you speak, I feel so energized and inspired. I mean, I've seen you speak on a number of occasions now, and I really do find it a privilege to hear your thoughts. So thank you very much. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe I'll start by opening it up to the panelists to see if there are any questions for Dr. Tewari. And for folks who have joined, please feel free to enter your questions into the Q&A. And we are happy to answer them. Any thoughts from our panelist team for Dr. Tewari?
I can go first. Thank you, Dr. Tewari, for sharing your stories and your battle of prostate cancer and being vulnerable here. Really took a lot of pearls from your own journey, and agree about the anti-fragile mindset and bouncing back. Just out of curiosity, my question is, which sport do you like better today? Is it cricket or is it baseball?
I don't have to pretend. I still play cricket, and I play badminton, and I love hiking.
Nice.
I love it. I didn't know that. We should talk about our favorite hiking places.
Breakneck Ridge.
Oh, that's a great one. That's a great one. I do Breakneck Ridge about just long enough between hikes to remember that I fear for my life every time so that I can do it again. And then the cycle restarts. That's fantastic. Thank you. Any other questions from our panel? Well, I've got one. If you were to choose, Dr. Tewari, your most valued leadership tip to share with people, and you shared a lot of pearls of wisdom today, but whether it be about an important leadership trait that you think was really instrumental in being able to bring you to where you are now, or what kind of advice you would give as far as, you know, something that a person might work on developing that you think would add strength to their professional development, what might that be?
We all have a different asset, but I often say to my new recruits and team members, I've been outsmarted many times, but rarely outworked. I think that's maybe the only thing I may want to say.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you. Okay, well, Dr. Tewari, really appreciate your time, and we hope you have a wonderful evening, and really appreciate you sharing your fantastic journey. Thank you. We will now move on to our next speaker, Dean Karen Kim, and I will, without further ado, hand it on to her.
Great. First of all, thanks. I'm really honored to be here, and thank you for the invitation. I know that everyone just sent me the background, but I am technically challenged, so I'm sorry, you're just going to have to get in my office. I would love to be able to use it. And it's really an honor to be here with this really distinguished group. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. Can I do that?
Yes, please.
And I apologize for the mess that probably you're going to see when I'm trying to share this. Oh, wow. Can I not share my screen?
I think you should be able to.
Today has been really a technology challenge. So when I'm sharing my screen, I'm not seeing my screen. How long have we been doing Zoom? For so long? I'm seeing myself, but I wonder if I click on this, if I just, oh, there we go.
There we go.
You see it?
Yep, looks great.
Okay. So maybe just a little background just to kind of frame my discussion. So I am currently the only Korean American woman dean of a U.S. medical school. And it has struck me as being very strange that in 2024, given the number of Asian American graduates we have and faculty, that this would be the case. Why am I celebrating this all the way in 2024 when we have really been a very large presence in the medical community? So I thought I would talk a little bit about my experience in terms of what is the paradox for Asian leaders. And we know there's a lot of isms, you know, there's racism, there's discrimination, there's microaggressions. We really felt a resurgence of this during the pandemic, but people have to understand that if we go back to the history of immigration to this country, we have been discriminated for over 100 years against. And so I'm just going to share a little bit about data and then talk about some of my experiences. And I think the data is pretty compelling. Should I put this in presentation mode or does this work? Let's see. I'll try this. Okay. I wonder how I change slides now. Oh, okay, well, so if you just think about Asian American data, and this is really in the framework of research, I do a lot of research on Asian health. You know, I think that what best summarizes what happens with Asian data is that we are either omitted or aggregated, or you extrapolate from one population to another. And we really have very little of the data that's collected on Asian Americans is really ever reported. And some of the challenges are that we're largely foreign born. We often have up to 30% of our communities are limited English proficient. There's a lot of intersectionality that's hard to piece apart. And we're often just really ignored. We're minimized. And sometimes there's justification to doing that. And this really extends into us being sort of an invisible community. And of course, we're not a homogenous community. We have very many different types of communities, all lumped under this big Asian American, Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander term, which complicates matters. But I just want to share a little data, which I thought was really compelling. This is data that looked at PIs from 1999 to 2019, and this was written up in eLife. And you can look at Asians are green, African Americans are in blue, Hispanic Latino are in yellow, and white and white Caucasian population is in red. And this is looking at the difference in funding rate relative to annual overall rate. And what's really clear to me is that we're on the very, very bottom of the curve. What's even more striking is this is looking at that same paper, the cumulative award surplus or deficit based on race ethnicity. And you can see it's clear as day that if you look at the cumulative advantage of being white compared to other racial ethnic groups, there's an advantage. But if you look at the cumulative advantage of being white versus Asian American, the cumulative disadvantage of Asian American PIs is shocking. And these are things that were reported. And I don't know if this is new data to you, then shame on the scientific community and others for not raising our voice, because I can't think of a bigger difference in funding disparities than what you can see at this line. And what's really depressing about it is it's growing as time goes on. It's not like we're addressing it and it's getting smaller, it's getting bigger. So, you know, if you also look at how underrepresented we are as a population in general for US biomedical research prizes, and this was reported in Cell 2022, we make up about 31% of trainees, graduates, postdocs, about 20% of faculty, and yet we're only about 6.8% of the really prestigious national awards. And often we have zero representation. And some of the potential causes are, of course, invisibility, the cost of being an interchangeable Asian. You know, we maybe are not part of the club for nomination and selection. And then, you know, frank discrimination, which I think has to be on the table when you look at some of this data. And if you look at medical school faculty by race and ethnicity in 2021, you look at it broken down by big aggregate categories: white, Black, Hispanic, Asian. By faculty, chair, and deans. Faculty are in blue, chairs are in gray, and deans are in pink. We are just going in the wrong direction. And we want all, you know, people of color to be able to sort of rise up and have these opportunities. But it's really shocking in 2021. Now, things are changing. We're seeing more Asians become deans, which I think are great. But, you know, this is really compelling data. And this was from the AAMC faculty roster from 2021. And part of the reason why, you know, I think if you make noise, if people see the data, maybe they'll believe the data, maybe there'll be changes. But I'll show you another slide. But this is looking at, I counted the Council of Dean Directory. The AAMC puts one out. And I looked at the one from October 23, and I just hand counted based on name, face, look people up. And if you look at the number of deans in the US, South Asian men, South Asian women, East Asian men, East Asian women, I mean, we're in the 0.6 range, right? I mean, that is really unusual. And so maybe you could say we don't want to be deans, or maybe you could say that we're not qualified, or maybe we can say that there's a systemic problem that stops us from being able to reach that success. And this may be part of the problem. So there's a New England Journal of Medicine article that came out in 2022 on my left. It shows underrepresented in medicine faculty trends. And of course, we're not included in that group because we make up 21% of faculty. And what you see are some really, really great trends. We see more full professors, more department chairs, more clinical faculty, and actually a nice peaking of deans, which I think is great. And if you think of the natural progression from full professor to department chair to deans, that's what we would hope to see. And I think that's wonderful. What you see on the right is looking at the AAMC Council of Deans as of January 22, looking at US medical school deans by dean type and race ethnicity. Underrepresented in medicine, which is the blue line on the bottom, and then non-underrepresented in medicine, which is the green line on the top. And so you've got, where are the Asians falling in? So if you look at the fine print, Asians are included in the non-URM because we're non-URM. So we're included in that green line, but we probably don't make any blip on that green line because actually, if you looked at our population, we would be lower than the blue line on the bottom. And so it's partly, so of course, I promised myself that if I ever became a dean, not that it was something that I really aspired to be at the time, I would change this graph. So hopefully if I ever get asked back to do this, you're going to see a different line. So I thought, so again, we're invisible. We're up at the top, but we're invisible. So I thought it would be helpful to tell a little bit about my pathway here. So I was never a chair. Prior to becoming a dean, I was a vice provost of research at the University of Chicago. So I really oversaw all of research. And maybe that was my pathway here. But I will tell you that I had 2 interviews for dean. And my first interview, I remember these are the questions or topics that people raised when they were talking to me. The first thing is I was meeting with the person who was going to be the head of the whole clinical operations at a medical school. So a really big position. They would be reporting to me. And yet the first question they asked me was, did I see Crazy Rich Asians? And I thought, well, we have so much to talk about. We have, clinical operations, we have the budget, we have financial projections, and you're going to be talking to me about this. Clearly, we are coming from different places. And then the search firm, I was sitting talking to the search firm, and my daughter was having a golf tournament, and I really wanted to see if she was going to win. And so I was like, oh, she just got a bogey. I don't know what I said. And she said, oh, you must be a tiger mother. I said, oh, what in the world? Why? I am the farthest away from a tiger mother. And so I was really surprised by that. And then when I was interviewing, the committee was concerned that because I was interviewing in a place where there are not a lot of Asian Americans or Korean Americans, they were worried if I would be able to do my research in Koreans. I don't even do research in Koreans. If you looked at my publications, you would know that. And so this is the type of stereotyping that happens, even at the level of trying to go through a dean search. But to me, what was most shocking is I asked the senior search consultant, tell me about placing Asians into dean's positions. And she told me that it's very challenging to place Asians into dean's positions, especially if they have an accent. Then she said, but you speak English well. And I basically said, so do you. And she looked at me like I was crazy, but I was thinking she was the crazy one. So these are the biases that go into, how we do our work. And I think it's really important to know this, because regardless of how you see yourself, it's how other people see you. And until we get sort of a critical mass in leadership, these are the issues that we're going to face. So is there a secret to success? And this is sort of my recipe. Mine is to define your North Star and feel really, really proud of what it is that drives you. And so for me, my North Star has really always been to think about how we are going to build Asian health to reduce health disparities. And when I was at the University of Chicago, they largely did African American health, but I unapologetically created an academic community partnership called the Center for Asian Health Equity, and we were hugely successful. And that was a nonprofit organization combined with the university to create this center. And we really had 4 pillars around engagement, research, education, training, and policy. But because we were so capable of doing this work, we also became sort of equity for African immigrants, African Americans, Hispanic. We just sort of led the equity conversation at the university. And this was an old picture of just part of my team. And even though the university said, oh, you're never going to be successful because we're not interested in Asian health, I said, well, just watch me. So again, define your North Star. The second thing is find your voice and use it. So this is, I was one of the original principal investigators for the All of Us Research Initiative, or Precision Medicine Initiative, an amazing initiative to recruit 1 million people with 50% of those being underrepresented in research, which is including Asian Americans. And so we were really excited about this campaign. It was going to be a national study. It was very exciting. And then they showed this picture. And I sort of raised my hand and I said, well, this is not all of us. This is some of us. And so while the future might begin with you, I don't see myself in here. And this is supposed to be about all of us. And so what they ended up doing was punishing me for that by then using Chicago as a place to start all of their videos of Asian Americans. Even though this company was from LA, they decided to fly to Chicago. I have yet to change this picture, but we did get the national engagement and recruitment of Asian American, Pacific Islander, Native Hawaiians for the All of Us campaign. So they have given us huge amounts of money, and we are in over 23 states. We have national partners in the United States proper, Hawaii, and Guam as well. And so find your voice. And then when you find it, you make sure that you're impactful. So this is some of the data that we see here, what's happened since our involvement, which is we started in 2018 and slowly over time changed the infrastructure to be able, we started in 2020, and you can see that Asian American Native Hawaiian is in orange and blue, and this dotted line is during the pandemic. So here was where they were before we started. I'm getting all my dates wrong. Sorry, guys. We started in 2018, and this is the growth that we've had. And we are continuing to really grow by pushing the study to be more inclusive and having more languages. So it works if you kind of raise your voice. And the other thing is, if you're going to take something on, make sure you have impact. So I told you that I was the first physician scientist to take on the role of vice provost for research for the University of Chicago, and there were a lot of naysayers. What is she going to know? She doesn't know science. You know, she's a clinician. My research is real community based. But when I came on, I grew the University of Chicago research portfolio faster and to new levels, and for the university to reach new levels of research. And so, you know, make your mark when you have that opportunity. When the door opens, make sure that you're impactful and surround yourself by a team, and then delegate authority to let them do their work. So here's really think maybe my last slide, maybe there's one more, which is our path forward. So again, establish high functioning teams and delegate. You know, I think nobody does well under a micromanagement team. And I always think that, you know, be an A leader, because then you hire A people. Don't be a C leader, in which case you hire like D and F leaders. So really kind of be a high functioning team, be really data driven, because I think and contextualize that data. Be prepared. I was not prepared right now. I thought I would just be able to click on the Zoom. And so I apologize for getting on late. I should have gotten on sooner. They told me to get on half an hour early. I thought I knew better. And so be prepared. So I wasn't following my own advice today. Be a problem solver. The world is, you know, we are all around people who want to bring you problems. And so the way I think about my world is very simple. I think about problem solvers and problem bringers. And it's very clear to me, I want to go with problem solvers. And so when you think about being in leadership, you know, there are plenty of people who can tell you what's wrong. There's really few people who can tell you how to make that wrong right. And those are the people that you want to be around. And then I think particularly for Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islanders, we should lead and not be apologetic about it. I think it's really important that we're seen, heard, and that we believe in ourselves. And a really good mentor of mine said to me, remember, you have to be your own coach and your own cheerleader. And I think that cheerleader is really an important part, because we have to, you know, give ourselves grace, because when we take on new leadership roles, there are really big challenges, and sometimes you don't always know the right answer. So the other thing is, you know, collectively, what should we think about? You know, be a mentor and be mentored. Be a good sponsor. Think about our next generation, particularly our students, and really support them as they try to grow. Join committees, because when you join committees, you can help other people. Join national organizations, because the higher up you are as a person, the more you can bring people up with you. And really, whatever organization you are, really embed a culture of nomination, because if we don't nominate ourselves and our peers, then we were really left out of the table. And then, you know, I've been working with many people to think about a leadership academy, which is what you have here. It's really important, because leadership matters. Thank you.
Dean Kim, that was amazing. So if I may say, I think that you are fierce, you are unwaveringly professional, and we've heard some examples of how you've really taken some like very challenging and difficult situations head on. Do we have any? I feel very inspired by you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any? It looks like we don't have any questions in the Q&A. So for folks who are joining as participants, please feel free to stick them in there and we will answer your questions. In the meantime, do we have any questions from our panelists?
Dean Kim, similarly, just really, really incredible work, and so proud. I'm also proud because I was born while my parents were going to Penn State, so a Nittany Lion at heart, and so making my parents' alma mater very proud. My question is, I mean, the graph of the awards that you were
Yeah.
able to accomplish at University of Chicago, do you feel like in like being the only NHPI dean that you had to do like above and beyond, like double or exponential what maybe some of our white colleagues would have had to do to
So it's interesting. I've never felt that way because my father used to say, don't say it, just do it. So my research is an implementation scientist. I see a problem and I just know how to fix it, right? That's sort of the way my mind works. And so I feel like, try to catch me, just try to catch me. So I feel like, I feel like I pose a big threat to people when I come into an organization because I have such clarity in what I want to do, and I don't really ask. And so, no, I just feel like what I'm put on this earth for is to have impact. My mother died at the age I am right now, never went to Europe, of hepatitis B, which is why I do this work. She died of hepatitis B, liver cancer. I was a gastroenterology fellow, and no one had told me that 1 out of 2 people who have hepatitis B in the United States are Asian. So I was angry. That's why I developed that nonprofit organization 25 years ago. And we're like now 28 people strong. And so what I do is I just want people to get out of my way, just let me do my work. I don't think it comes from a point of feeling like I'm competitive. It comes from the point that we have too little time on this earth and we need to make too much of an impact. And so that's sort of how I think about it. The other thing my mom used to say is, you only have what makes you equal in the world is that everyone has the same 24 hours in the day. And so use it wisely. And that sort of resonates in my mind when I want to be like, I'm too tired, or I can't, and there's people that are just doing great things. I don't know that I'm doing great things, but I'm trying my best to have impact beyond myself. So I'm not competitive that way. I'm just like, I feel very strongly, good luck trying to be better than me. And I'm not a smart person. I just work hard and I pick good people. I think that's my key.
That's incredible. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other questions from our group? Alrighty, well, I have one. I guess it's a little tangential, but I was thinking as you were speaking, and this is a reflection of, we've got a couple in the Q&A as well, sorry. So I'll ask mine and then we'll move to the Q&A. It's a reflection of something that we do at the beginning of all of our monthly meetings, which is a personal professional share. And I think many on this call have done that, including Dr. Wei. And a lot of folks we see patterns. Even if folks have joined for the first time, we still see like patterns and when people talk about their struggles to get to where they are. One pattern that keeps coming up is that folks know that like they had to get to a point where they felt comfortable being assertive and being comfortable voicing their opinion, but they perceive that when they do it that way, they're being seen as aggressive. Mm-hmm. So when that happens, do you have advice to our folks who may be struggling with that?
Yeah, I think I remember when I was doing research and I was arguing with my PI or something, and he's like, "You're Asian. Why are you arguing with me?" And so, I mean, that wasn't even trying to be hidden, right? So I think that there's a lot of stereotypes and microaggressions that are put on us. And when we fall out of that stereotype, we're sort of punished for it. So if they expect you to be quiet and submissive and not assertive, and then you are opposite that, it makes it really hard for people to understand what you're doing. Like, why are you breaking the stereotype I have of all Asians, right? So I think and you can't spend your life trying to teach people, right? And I'm suffering a little bit of that right now. I'm at a very, very different geography than I was when I was in Chicago, which was very diverse. I think what my advice is that you have to just continue to be yourself. Now, we all think that the only type of leadership is all about being like the loudest person, the one that, commands authority in the room. A lot of Asian leaders are very different than that. And unfortunately, you get penalized for that because it's the squeaky wheel in leadership a lot of times. But I feel like you have to lead in the way that you feel comfortable. And I'll tell you that if you're smart and capable and you get things done, people notice that.
Thank you. That was an amazing answer. Thank you. So we've got a couple of questions in the chat. Our first one is from Hemel Vyas. Hemel's our Senior Associate Dean of International Personnel for the Icahn School of Medicine, and she's also one of our co-chairs for the Professional Development Committee on CAEPD. She's got a comment. I'll just read it out loud here because she can't, sorry, Hemel can't speak as a panelist. She said, Dean Kim, thank you for sharing your journey. Incredibly inspiring, and I'm sure we all agree. We also have Jim Tsai, who is the System Chair of Ophthalmology and the President of New York Eye and Ear. And he is our Executive Advisor at CAEPD too. He says, Dean Kim, any pearls of wisdom on positioning oneself in executive search firm recruitment for senior positions?
Yeah, so you know, there are well, I think it's practice. So it's a very interesting thing to go through a search, you know, and you go through many different levels. And I think the way I was so successful in my searches, because I've only applied to 2 dean's jobs and I got them offered both, but I turned that one down with the tiger mother and all that stuff. I think it's really important. This is my wisdom that I've learned. What I do when I do a search is, you know, a lot of times when people want to have a search, they think very much about themselves, because, you know, it's like, this is what I've done this, I've done that. What I've done in every search is I know more about them than they know about themselves. I join every newspaper, I read every article. If it's a public institution, I've looked at every board minute. I know that, you know, all the people that I'm going to be interviewing with, and I talk about them. Not so much about me, because you know what? The bottom line is people love hearing about themselves. And so if you look at the way that I interviewed versus, you know, I sometimes watch how other people that I'm interested in recruiting, how they interview, it's usually a recitation of their curriculum. There's a role for that, you know, there's a role for that. But it really has to be about you being able to talk about the other institution. And so the other thing that I've always think it's really important is you've got to write an amazing cover letter, particularly me. I mean, 75% of deans are a chair first. I wasn't a chair first. And so I think what got me through the first door was that my cover letter, I would have to say, was pretty amazing. Happy to share it with people. I had my brother, who's like an amazing writer, help me with it. And every single place they said the reason they were interested in talking to me is because of my cover letter, which was 5 pages long. They told me 2, but I had too much to say. So, I mean, these are the lessons that I think you learn.
Wow, that's incredible. So much experience. You're so
And
brilliant.
I'm not usually somebody who pumps my own chest, but you know what? I'm feeling empowered with this Asian group right now. So thank you.
That's amazing. We love that. And we feel empowered by you in turn. So thank you very much. Any other final comments or questions for Dr. Kim?
I have a question.
Oh, yes, Astrid.
Okay, so I love everything that has been presented so far as to us being leaders, but my question would be, how could we better prepare the next generation in the leadership position to tackle these challenges?
Yeah, I think you're doing it. You know, I think you're doing it. So raising awareness, convening people together, you know, having your organization. I think these are all things that the rest of people fumble through. I think there are certain programs that I think are better than others, but you know, I think if you're thinking about it being a dean and you happen to be a woman, I mean, ELAM is a great place that, you know, teaches you skills. It's really about being able to lean on your networks. So, you know, when you're at places, be seen, you know, ask questions, introduce yourself, and then follow up with people, because the bigger your networked world is, the easier it is for you to continue climbing a ladder, because they help you with references. They help you with promotion and tenure. So it's really important to stay in touch, be highly accountable. But really, for me, it's about being visible. Walk up to someone that you don't know, who may have been an important speaker, and introduce yourself, grab their card, ask them for something, you know, just stay in touch. So being visible, I think, is really important.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, Dean Kim, I know you've got to move on to the next thing. But we really appreciate your time today and sharing your wisdom, and you're such full of energy and brilliance, and just innovative spirit that I really enjoyed your presentation. I can tell that everybody else here did too. So have a
Well,
wonderful
thank you.
day,
And
thank you.
congratulations. I'm so sorry to the panelists that I need to jump off. I'm trying to put out an emergency right now. So thank you and good luck.
No worries. Have a great day. Thank you. All right. And last but certainly not least, we have Dr. Eric Way.
Right, thank you. I'm gonna pull up my slides. And similarly, just really want to thank CAEPD, thank Amanda, Jim, Astrid, everyone involved for not just inviting me to come and speak. It's a privilege and an honor, but also putting together this center, bringing focus and light and strategic and purposeful effort towards Asian equity and professional development. Just want to confirm that you could see my slides.
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Okay. So when Amanda asked me to focus on psychological safety, struggled a little bit. You know, I was thinking about the Helping Healers Heal program that I started in LA's public safety net system and brought to New York City Health and Hospital, New York City's. And I was also thinking about, well, this is about professional development. The lessons learned from, you know, the past 10 plus years of being in leadership. And so this is kind of a hybrid. I had to take bits and pieces of both of these talks and try to meld it together. And I only have 20 minutes, so I'm going to tell a very abbreviated version of a piece of our story here at New York City Health and Hospitals. And then I had to take the 10 lessons learned from leadership and whittle it down to 6. And I'm going to try to get through all of it and save time for questions. And I do think in June, I'm going to share more kind of my personal professional journey where I could get more into details about myself. No big disclosures. I serve on Metro Plus Health's board because I run their CAEPD. They're a subsidiary of New York City Health and Hospitals. I'm on the Wellbeing Steering Committee for NAM and some advisory committees for local fellowships here in New York City. So didn't realize that I wouldn't be able to see, or you wouldn't be able to put things into the chat. This is how I was going to make it interactive. I was going to ask, in your mind, when you hear the term psychological safety, what do you think of, right? And this is a standing interview question that I ask of anyone that I'm interviewing. Now, in your own words, how would you define psychological safety? How have you used it in your career? How do you use it as a leader? And so unfortunately, you guys won't be able to respond to this. So I'll just give you the answer here.
So Eric, sorry to interrupt, but if you want to, folks can answer questions in the Q&A and then we can view it that way.
Sure.
Yeah, it's up to you. We could try
Maybe
it.
I'll give a minute if people want to type in one word, a definition, you know, a bullet. When you hear psychological safety, what do you think of? All right, Carolyn said safe to say environment. Sang Yoon said can speak up. Thank you. So for time's sake, I'm gonna move forward. So this is from the Harvard Business Review, and the title of this article is "What is Psychological Safety?" And the author, Amy Gallo, basically is quoting Amy Edmondson, who's credited with coming up with this concept. But a team psychological safety is a shared belief held by members of a team that it is okay to take risks, to express their ideas and concerns, to speak up with questions, and to admit mistakes, all without fear of negative consequences. As Edmondson puts it, it's felt permission for candor. Right. And so I think we could all, you know, quickly imagine what physical safety is, right? And in the kind of whiplash of post-COVID anti-AAPI hate, right? We all felt this, right? Was it safe for me to walk to the subway? A Asian male about my age was stabbed outside our central office building on Worth Street, and right near Chinatown, right? Is it safe that I walk home to Brooklyn, right? So that's physical safety, but psychological safety is invisible, right? And to me, it is right that I feel safe raising my hand and saying something went wrong, something almost went wrong. This is a setup for something to go wrong. I have an idea how we could do things better without the fear of getting my head bit off, right? Without the fear of being punished for it, for being blamed for it, being shamed, making my boss look bad, making the board look bad, right? All these reasons why people stay quiet, why they hide things and sweep it under the rug. To me, it's having the safety to feel at peace being yourself in the work environment, right? And being able to express what you truly are thinking, what you truly are believing, and have true safety and true peace being able to do that. So briefly, work for New York City Health and Hospitals. I've been here since January of 2018. I was recruited by Dr. Mitch Katz, who had turned around San Francisco's public system, and then he turned around Los Angeles's public system, and he was coming home. He grew up in Sheepshead Bay in Brooklyn using Coney Island Hospital for his healthcare. And he was coming home, and this was going to be the biggest turnaround, right? $1.6 billion structural deficit on a $6 billion annual budget. That meant after all the subsidies, federal, state, city, the city still had to find another $1.6 billion in its budget just to make H&H whole. And so all the smart people were saying, keep attriting staff, even frontline nurses and doctors, close 2 of the hospitals, keep closing services, keep shrinking. And so it was headed the way of the safety net systems in many other major cities like Philadelphia. They were closing, right? And so this was going to be the biggest challenge coming in. But imagine working for a system with a big dark cloud of debt hanging over it. Am I going to be, right, the next department, the next service that's being closed, right? Is it, so unsafe in terms of nurse to patient ratios that like I'm going to lose my nursing license, right, my physician license. And it was also a very punitive culture, right? It was a losing culture. And so coming in, this was going to be a huge challenge. We put together the strategic pyramid in early 2018. Patient, family, community at the top, the vision statement, mission statement, our core values, our iCare values, and then we came up with 5 strategic pillars that we use for balanced scorecards, our dashboards across our system. But in 2020, we also revisited this and said that nowhere in here does it explicitly call out equity. And so adding this social and racial equity base that cross-cuts all of our strategic pillars and everything is built upon, as well as adding the word equitable health system to our vision statement were the 2 edits there. But I think what really summarizes our system is the 2 words at the end of our mission statement, which is without exception. Anyone who comes through our doors deserve high quality, safe patient care with the best patient experience. And then social and racial equity is kind of our why. This is my office that was formed. There didn't exist before I came here as the inaugural chief quality officer. Was able to create this office of quality and safety, inherited about 6, 7 people, and it's quickly grown over the last 6 years or so. So these are all the different verticals that report up to the Office of Quality and Safety. This is a little bit of an old image. So on the right, I added the new ones: virtual express care, hospital at home, emergency management, hospital police security, workforce wellness, and is shared with IT, AI, digital health innovation, and shared services. Want to share, this is our quality and safety transformation plan. We wanted to boil down everything that everyone told us on this world tour, 2 full days of meeting one-on-one with everyone at the acute facilities, 1 full day out of the post-acute facilities, our diagnostic and treatment centers, just dumps of decades of pent up frustration, things that they wish they could have called central office. My favorite was learning all the nicknames that they had for central office, and I think the best one was the Death Star. Someone was a Star Wars fan, but it just felt like they couldn't talk, that there was just this gap, right? The leaders were in this ivory tower where there were no patients, no patient care, no families, imagining what the problems were like, coming up with solutions that wouldn't work, right? And so took all that, psychological trauma that people dumped on me, and tried to distill it down to 4 key points, right? This is what the common things that people were telling us that we needed to fix to truly, transform quality and patient safety across health and hospitals. Now, I'm just going to focus on number 1, right? The culture was all wrong. They had just failed a 10-year stint with Simpler Consulting. It was a non-healthcare engineering consulting group that taught lean. They branded it Breakthrough, millions and millions of dollars spent, really turned people off to performance improvement, let executive leadership off the hook because they could blame the consultants, right? And I love lean. I was initially trained in lean at University of Michigan. When I mentioned lean, I felt like people were going to call hospital police to throw me out the front door, right? That's how poorly it went. But the culture was all wrong. You can't go from 0 to the next day being Toyota and pulling people offline for 4-day rapid improvement events, drawing value stream maps. They're worried about the short staffing and clinical care. And then they're going to go back and suddenly implement all of this. And it was a very punitive culture. And the thing that was missing that I could tell from my first meeting coming here, even before I accepted the job, psychological safety was missing. So they had a quality board meeting called the QAC, Quality Assurance Committee. It was the most feared committee across the system. Once a quarter, every hospital, every service line had to come in front of the board, in front of senior leadership of the system. And despite 17 prep meetings, the CEO is still having a panic attack in the bathroom next to the boardroom because he knows or she knows that previous CEOs have been fired at the meeting. That it wasn't uncommon for the statement to be said, congratulations, you still have a job for the next 3 months, right? Till the next time you come to the QAC. And so if that's how senior leadership and the board was treating the CEO and his or her cabinet, right? How are they treating the chairs and the nursing directors? And how are they treating frontline staff, right? It all rolls downhill, right? And so sure enough, right, nobody was reporting any patient safety events, right? Do you think that H&H was perfect and nothing was happening? It was because of this punitive, fear-based culture that was more important to make, right, send a message that something bad happens, right? These are the people that we fired, right, to explain it to City Hall, than actually learning and actually improving, right? And actually, right, so much of point 1 is putting the focus back on our most precious resource, which is our people, right? Every other industry has figured this out. Marriott, Southwest Airlines. You take care of your employees take care of your customers, the business takes care of itself. I think it's even more important in healthcare because everything we do is human, right? And so restoring this psychological safety was the first thing that Mitch and I, Mitch is the president and CEO of Health and Hospitals, agreed. And it was over wontons at Mr. Wu's Wonton King in Chinatown in December of 2017 that we agreed that helping healers heal would be the first thing that I brought to New York City Health and Hospitals. And so H3 is a peer support based program that initially started as a second victim response program. This was me seeing emotional and psychological trauma in my co-residents when I was in residency. This was me being asked to take on root cause analysis meetings as I became the deputy CMO at LA County USC, and seeing how we were bringing staff to tears. And then after an 1.5-hour meeting, we were patting them on the back and saying, go back to the ICU and pass meds perfectly. Go back to the operating room and do surgery perfectly. And I knew, and they knew, and everyone in the room knew that they wouldn't be able to do that, right? They were distraught over this case that we just discussed, right? And it just left this pit at the bottom of my stomach saying that we need to be able to do better, right? This is how we're burning people out. This is why people are dropping out of healthcare. This is why, right, suicides are happening at an alarming rate in healthcare workers. And so looking around and learning from John Hopkins' RISE program, learning from the 4U team, which is Susan Scott's program at University of Missouri, we created a peer second victim peer support kind of committee and started exploring how we better support our staff. And that's how H3 was born, was kind of this groundswell from the the front lines and the bottom up. It's based on 3 tiers here, and we added this battle buddy through COVID-19, but local unit department level support is just the house of medicine. The whole culture was wrong, right? We go into healthcare because we possess healing powers. We're empathetic people that want to help people in their time of need, and we give it to patients and their families all day long freely, right? But when it came to each other, it's almost the opposite. You weren't allowed to show weakness. You weren't allowed to support your colleagues, right? It was like this toughen everyone up through residency or nursing orientation so that they could survive, right, the trauma that they're going to feel for the next 20, 30 years. But can we change that local support so it's less of the blaming and shaming and putting them on, right, M&M, putting them through these RCA meetings? If something traumatizing happens that would traumatize anybody, like losing a pediatric trauma patient, right? Are we coming around them and saying, you're important to us? If you want to talk about it, I'm here for you. I could share a similar case that I had, how it made me feel, how I got through that, right? Don't let anyone go down that downward spiral alone. Tier 2 is peer support champions. So these are trained peer support champions that go through 4 additional hours of training. We want every discipline, every shift, every unit covered. And think of this as rapid response, right? Something bad happens, that there's immediately somebody who's been trained that can provide one-on-one debrief or facilitate a group debrief if it's the whole unit that's traumatized. And another important task for them is to be able to refer or triage up to tier 3. You know, not everybody who loses a patient needs to speak to a psychiatrist, but way too many people told me, right, well, we give them good health insurance. Why don't they just call the number on the back of their card? So if you're already in a dark place, having signs of clinical depression, maybe even suicidal thoughts, imagine navigating the US healthcare system to find a PCP to refer you to psychiatry and so forth. And so these are vetted resources, and it keeps growing as our staff asks for things such as domestic violence counseling, substance abuse, and have vetted and readily available within 24 hours, so they don't have to wait weeks to months. And so coming here, it was going top down, right? I built this program at LAC USC. We spread it to the other 2 hospitals in the LA system. Coming in here, it was, how do we do it across 18 facilities and service lines from the top down? So that was our project for the first 2 years before COVID struck. We were lucky that we had the 2 years because we had 18 programs up live, trained peer support champions, teaming up with behavioral health services. But during COVID, it had to expand, it had to evolve, it had to grow. And so with the help of Project Hope, and Greater New York Hospital Association, we actually took Helping Healers Heal internationally to 47 different countries, and it's touched over 100,000 healthcare workers across the globe. Also share with you that we, coming out of COVID, set a whole slate of new 5-year goals. And the first goal, after a kind of a long process of going through everyone's ideas and voting, we decided that I care with kindness is our top goal, right? So it still baffles us how we can reattach a severed arm in a motorcycle accident, right? We can take somebody whose heart was stopped and bring it back to life, but we can't answer the phone. We can't say, hi, how may I help you, right? And so making H&H a kinder and gentler place, friendlier place to receive care is our top priority. We have 8,000 staff who have already signed this kindness pledge on the right. We have over 200 kindness ambassadors trained. But our goal is that anytime there's an encounter, whether it's a phone or in person or telehealth, that it starts with how may I help you? And so, that plus a lot of different other things, like the whole quality and safety transformation plan, has led us to a little bit of a, we're not all the way there yet, but a little period of enlightenment. And so two things that kind of embody this culture change, that psychological safety, restoring and promoting and fostering psychological safety has been able to do for us, is that we now have a system-wide RCA review committee. Right? Imagine if I tried to get all the leadership from all 11 hospitals onto the same WebEx and discuss their worst adverse events, right, out in the open in 2018. It never could have happened, right? But now we have a leader from one facility reviewing the corrective action plan, presenting it to the rest of the leadership, critiquing, right, how they did the RCA, the corrective actions, and they're really focusing on, are any of those corrective actions applicable for system-wide? We can't wait for this to happen 11 times before we fix it across the system. But this has also led to CEOs. You think they used to share what citations they got and where they were in terms of green, yellow, and red? There's no way, right? But now CEOs openly invite all their peers, all the other CEOs, to their Joint Commission exit surveys. They're like, open book, come and see, what we got cited on. So hopefully that you can be better prepared for your surveys. And so this is psychological safety, what it allows to happen across the system. So that's a little bit of our journey on restoring psychological safety in New York City health and hospitals. But now I'm going to bring it a little bit closer to what could it do for individuals. And so I give this talk to our healthcare admin scholars program fellows or residents in their last 2 years of training, to our clinical leadership fellows. It's just 10 musings of one leader, things that I wish I knew coming out of residency. And so I've distilled this down to 6 that I think are the most applicable here. And so you heard Dean Kim talk about this a little bit, right? Mentorship is priceless. I think in the academic setting especially, but a lot of unhealthy mentor-mentee relationships, I've seen a lot of this quid pro quo, right? I'm willing to let you name me as a mentor and use my name as long as you're giving me something in return, right? Whether that's publications where I'm the last author, or right, grant money, so forth. And so I'll show 2 quick anecdotes. I had a mentor in Los Angeles who told me a true mentor wants what's best for you without expecting anything in return. And he actually walked the walk. It wasn't just talk. He was my boss, the CMO at LAC. When Mitch tried to recruit me to New York City Health and Hospitals, this was going to hurt him, right? I covered so many parts of his CMO portfolio. I was interim chief quality officer at LA County at the time. This was going to set him back, right? But not once did he try to talk me out of it, right? He knew what an opportunity this was. And so he wanted what was best for me without expecting anything in return. And the second is a lot of mentors try to mold people that they remind them of themselves into the next them, right? Take exactly the same steps that I took, and then, one day you could be me. And so Mitch once told me, it's not my job to turn you into the next Mitch Katz, right? Which a lot of people want to blame him for, trying, or that's what he was thinking, right? He's like, my job is to turn you into the best leader that Eric Way, or help you be the best leader that Eric Way can be, right? You shouldn't be me. And so finding the right mentor that doesn't want anything in return or expect anything in return, is not trying to turn you into something that you're not, but actually helping you grow into your full potential, is priceless. But just like dating, if you don't seek out mentors, you don't ask to get lunch, you don't ask to get coffee, you don't ask for that meeting, right? Then you'll never know if it's a right fit, right? And a lot of those, it'll just be a one-off, right? But you get to hear somebody's story, and that's still worth it, right? But maybe that 1 out of 10 will be that lifelong mentor that will be really able to help you. The second is, or the fifth, be kind, right? So kindness is, I care with kindness. Kindness is this core value. These are my three children. Every evening I ask them 3 questions, and one of them is, what's one kind thing that you did for someone else, right? So it's the same values that we try to instill in our children, but sometimes at work it doesn't come through, right? And for us, right, from this leadership down, this is our core value, right? I interview everybody who's a final candidate to come into the Office of Quality and Safety, and I want to make sure that they're a kind person, and that's what they're seeking, and that's the type of culture that they want to be in, right? We know there are a lot of smart people, a lot of talented people, even a lot of mission-driven people, but it just takes one unkind person to unwind a team, to unwind an organization. And so this is something that runs through the Office of Quality and Safety. I've had to let go of senior leaders because they did not possess this value. And this book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, is one way that I use root cause analysis based off the assessment in the back of the book. Why did we score 2.1 on the lack of trust dysfunction, right? What are the things that are contributing to it? What are the symptoms? What are the root causes? And what are the corrective actions that we're going to put together? This is one of the 3 things that I look for when I'm hiring somebody, right? Mission, kindness, track record of getting things done. Another way of saying this is what goes around comes around, right? Dean Kim talked about the authoritative, loud, assertive leader, right? I've seen 2 phenotypes. That one that Dean Kim was describing, who's trampled people, who people fear, right? And then there's the people who would, right? People who work for him would line up to take bullets for them, right? They are this empathetic, kind, right? Transformative, in the book Good to Great, level 5 leader that people can get behind. See, I'm running a little short on time, so I'll just go through a couple more of these and save time for questions. The snowball effect is real, right? I was really fascinated by Dean Kim talking about executive search firms, because I've actually never been through an executive search. I actually haven't interviewed since I came out of residency for the ED job at LA County USC, right? It's just, I did what I could to make as big of a difference in the world as possible with the scope that I was giving. And then like 8 months later, 12 months later, they kept asking me to do more and more and more. And so the joke for a while was I couldn't hold a job for 12 months, right? Until I ended up somehow in New York City. But a lot of people think, right, I'm coming out, I've been trained in this fellowship and that, certification. I'm going to tackle the biggest snowball. I'm going to boil the ocean. I'm going to save the world, right? But you need to build momentum. And so getting these early wins, these notches, help start building relationships with people that you had those successes with, partners, right? But it also builds your reputation as, wow, that's somebody who you want to work with because they get things done. And pretty soon you're going to have to start saying no to a lot of things because you have to manage your capacity to have the biggest impact. But you can't come out here right away and say, biggest snowball, who wants to join me on this? And you have no track record, right? So this is what I have to really, hammer into our residents and our fellows who are seeking a career in quality improvement and leadership is that snowball effect. Find your hedgehog. This is from the book Good to Great. Pairs of companies, 2 good companies, one becomes great and has this massive hockey stick kind of return on their stock. Venn diagram of intrinsically, what are you most passionate about? Extrinsically, what are you better than the world at? And third, what drives your economic engine, or what does the world need? I have every direct report of mine do a hedgehog concept for themselves. So, right, what are you truly passionate about? What are you better than other people at? And what's the job, the position, the duties? And that overlap in the middle is purpose. That's your hedgehog concept. The great companies never veered from that. They didn't chase blockchain or AI or whatever the newest, sexiest thing was. They stayed with what they were good at. And it comes from this Greek parable, the fox knows many things, but the hedgehog knows one, but it knows that one very well, right? And so figuring out what your hedgehog concept, Japanese call it ikigai, right? Your why, will make you get up excited to come to work every day and make it harder for other people to knock you off of that pedestal of right? I'm doing my life's work, and right, microaggressions or challenging meetings or disrespects or microaggressions, those will just bounce off of you if you know that you're in your hedgehog. Be authentic. This is me 2 weeks into the job here at Health and Hospitals, giving a system-wide webinar about helping healers heal and how we're going to implement it here. But I started by telling 3 of my most painful stories. 3 times that I felt like I was a second victim. Stories that I did not tell my wife for 5 years. I didn't tell my colleagues, my residents, my mentors, my attendings in residency. And it was that fear, shame, are you going to think less of me, right? These are cases that will haunt me for the rest of my life. But getting up and saying, I'm a new clinical leader, I'm a senior vice president in this new leadership team, and I'm going to go first. I'm going to be vulnerable first, and I'm going to talk about my most painful cases so that you can start talking about your most painful cases and start being vulnerable and start being human again. Let's bring humanism back into our system. And so don't try to be something that you're not. People can tell. Patients can tell if you care, if you're being authentic. Colleagues can tell, right? Potential bosses, current bosses, right? Your direct reports, they can tell if you're not being authentic. And then finally, relationships are key. This is, right, how you get allies, how you get mentors, how you get people advocating for you, defending you in the room that you're not in, right? And it's hard, right? We all have way too much work to get done in 24 hours if we expect to, right, have family life, to sleep, right, to do any of the other things, exercise. And this seems like, extra, right? And I'll just tell one really quick anecdote on this. Another mentor of mine in LA, he was the CEO of Kaiser. He was the health commissioner before that. When he knew I was coming to New York City, he was like, oh, that's great. Like, who do you know in the health or quality and patient safety space in New York City? I said, nobody, right? I don't know anyone in New York. And he said, that won't do. I'm going to introduce you to 5 people that I think you need to know in that space. You need to take them all to lunch. Don't leave without their cell phone number, and don't leave without asking them 5 people they think you should know in this space. Do that until the last person tells you 5 names that you already have in your cell phone. So very expensive, gained a lot of weight, but it has paid back so much in spades over the last 6 years through the pandemic, having this network, right? Doesn't mean that's the only way to do it, but it's, right, you have to invest time and it's going to pay you back, right? Building these relationships. And you can't do anything in leadership, quality improvement, professional growth without the help of others. And so I will stop there. Sorry, there's only 5 minutes left for questions. But I'll go more into kind of the personal and professional journey on the next talk.
Wow. Dr. Wei, thank you so much. I mean, if I may, I see you as a big thinker with such moving compassion as you lead your teams. To me, it seems like you are steady as a rock and have this very kind of calming way about you that kind of makes you feel like everything's going to be okay. Like, there's a lot happening out here, but I feel like everything's going to be okay. Listening to you, and especially in the content of your talk. Thank you so much. That was amazing. Okay, so we'll start off with our panelists to see if we have any questions for Dr. Wei. And from our audience, please feel free to post your questions in the chat. Well, I'll kick us off then. So I've got a lot of questions. I'm trying to figure out which one. It's such an interesting story. You talked a lot about, I guess I'll land on this one. You talked a lot about change management. Like you walked into an environment that you felt could be improved in really, or needed to be improved in, I think, one of the most difficult ways to improve something, which is culture change. So I know you talked a lot about the need for that, about how you approached it. That's all about like change management and changing the way people think about things. Do you have any recommendations for the leaders on this call for how you would approach change management fundamentally, 101?
Oh my gosh, that would be an entire days or weeks worth of conversations. But I think, right, it was showing people that change can happen first, right? So while we're talking about massive things, like our 7-point financial turnaround plan, or quality and safety transformation plan, or primary care transformation plan, right? Mitch also had an open door, open inbox policy, right? So anybody, all 43,000 staff, email the CEO directly, big, small, whatever the problems are. And he like in the middle be like, oh, someone email me, that pediatric patients going to the OR all cry. And it really breaks the anesthesiologist's hearts. And it's like, oh yeah, it's really sad, right? Kids who are sick who need to go. It's like, no, they have to pass a bank of vending machines. And so they're NPO since midnight. And like, all kids eat every hour, every 30 minutes while awake. And now they see cookies and chips and sodas as they're being wheeled, right? So something as simple as that, like an hour later, those vending machines are gone, right? And so we did this 100 small things that make a big difference to show people who had almost become Stockholm syndrome of working in a safety net system of, oh, it's just H&H, nothing ever changes here, right? Leaders come and go, nothing ever changes. So showing people those small things that they're raising are actually changing meant that bigger things, medium-sized things, big things were coming in, right? And then we could really tackle those. So first is changing people's minds that change can happen. But the culture change, like we changed QAC to QAPI. We now have people present a positive case. We ask, a standing prompt about, first, after how is the patient or the family doing? The second question is, how are the involved staff doing? Was support provided? Are they back at work, right? Is there anything else that we need to do, right? When we asked that question early on, nobody knew the answer, but now they know we're going to ask it in front of the board, right? It's been built into the culture that support is being provided to the staff at the time, that these events are happening. And then it's much more, we're learning about this together than a punitive culture. So really the principles of just culture. The first time that Mitch made the comment, that was a really sad case that you presented to us, but I don't think our teams could have done anything differently. That CEO was texting under the table, the board table, to all the other CEOs, like, can you believe our system CEO just said something like that, right? And so bringing in that culture of kindness, right? It's not that we're letting people off easy. It's not blaming people for the system faults, right? So there's so much of that, but right, the Office of Quality and Safety is seen as the keepers of the culture, the new culture for the health system, and H3 is a big part of that. I Care with Kindness is a big part of that. Joy in Work was something that we also worked on. And now Just Culture and Team Steps and all those things, but it all comes back to, are you being authentic? Are you leading with kindness? Are you leading by example? So we're all working clinically as well, right? I've worked a Friday overnight, all 11 of our EDs, shoulder to shoulder with the rest of the staff.
Yeah, that's truly inspirational that you're right there with everybody. So I thank you again, Dr. Wei. Thank you as well to Dr. Tewari, to Dean Kim. What an amazing panel. And last but not least, to all of the participants who were able to join. For folks who weren't joining today, this will be recorded so that we can share for people who wanted to come but could not. And also just a reminder that we have a number of activities for AAPI month throughout the health system, just very quickly, including our Tai Chi self-defense class tomorrow from 5:30 to 7 in the Guggenheim Pavilion, 7th floor. We also have another virtual event in coordination with UCLA and the Brock Institute from Eastern Virginia Medical Association. And last but not least, a series of tabling events at every single one of our main hospitals plus 42nd Street. And I'll just end by saying that, we saw so many different leaders. So we had 3 very different leaders with different backgrounds and different approaches to things, which again, I think just exemplifies how Asian is not a monolith and that everybody is different. And there are so many different cultures within our Asian groups. But one common thing that I think we've seen in all of our leaders speaking today is that they all dream big and they found the courage and the energy to go for it, which I just find so inspiring. So I'll leave us with those thoughts, and I thank you all again. Sorry for going a bit over. Have a wonderful night, everybody. See you at the rest of our API events.